So today we have Dr. Courtney Flowers. She is a DEI consultant and an associate professor of sport management at Texas Southern University. She serves on the editorial board of the Journal of Athlete Development and Experience and is a former NCAA Division I golfer who has worked for the United States Golf Association. So a little bit about Courtney. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree in sport management from the University of New Mexico, a Master of Science degree in Sport Administration from Grambling State University, a Bachelor of Science in Biology from Mississippi Valley State University. And typically her research focuses on Title IX, gender equity, name, image, and likeness in sports. And she sits on the advisory board for SPRI Incorporated. SPRI is a leading technology they focus on facilitating NIL and college athletics. She also regularly contributes in the sport litigation alert and legal issues in college athletics journals. She has 20 years of experience in college athletics and has formerly served as a senior academic athletic advisor for the University of New Mexico. She is also a former Division I golfer for the NCAA, like I said, and she's worked with the United States Golf Association, the National Minority Golf Foundation, and the First Tee. Additionally, she currently serves as the Secretary of Sport for the International Alliance of Health, Physical Education, Sport, and Dance, and serves as the facility affiliate for the San Jose State University Institute of Society. So let's see. Okay, I thought I saw somebody come in, but I guess not. So yeah, I mean, if you want to pull up your PowerPoint and kind of just give us a little oversight of what you do, that would be amazing.
All right, perfect. Can you guys see okay?
Right. Okay, yes, now we see it.
Perfect. Well, first, thanks again for having me. I truly enjoy talking about what I think the future of sports is going to look like. And so what I did was I kind of played a little bit with kind of revisiting some of these things, and hopefully you guys have some questions for me, but if you don't, I'm going to definitely share some ways that you can get in touch with me later on. So diving right in. When I was thinking about my career in sport, and I'm happy that I had this invitation because I never thought about this before, my career was actually built on one single question, and that is, what is Title IX? Today, what I'm going to talk about is a couple of things to really unpack that. I'm going to talk about Title IX and gender equity throughout the presentation today, but I'm also going to share my transition from the field, a little bit about my graduate degrees in sport, making it in professional and college sports, life as a college athletic administrator, transitioning my passion to my research, what I would do if I had to do it all over again, the future of sports, and at the end, have some time for a Q&A. This is me. I started out as a college golfer. I sucked in school. School was not my thing. School was my parents' thing. College was my parents' idea. And so I started out in education because my mom told me majoring in education meant I would have a job. I learned in my junior year at Mississippi Valley that I wanted to go and get a biology degree. So I was one of those people who ended up graduating 5 years later. But with that, I really got a chance to dive into golf. I got a chance to really understand what golf was. I played a little bit in high school, but it wasn't until college that I dived deep into it and actually learned about Title IX while playing golf. I am old enough to realize and to have been impacted when the NCAA separated men's and women's sports. And so in my sophomore year, I saw drastic changes. I saw that no longer was there a men's and women's collective budget, but it now had to be separate. I saw that we couldn't have an athletic dorm anymore. There had to be fair housing for everybody, so it wasn't all of this specialization for college athletes. And the only question I was getting from everybody was us because of Title IX. And I didn't understand what Title IX was as a college golfer, but I knew I wanted to understand more because it was greatly impacting me. But at that time, I saw it as a negative because my coach saw it as a negative. So I didn't understand. I traveled into basically falling into a graduate degree in sport management because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to teach, but I didn't know what avenue I wanted to go. So my coach actually went to Grambling State and got a master's degree, and he had sent some former golfers down there before I graduated. And so it was a normal progression for me. But it fell into my lap. But it was at Grambling that I kind of found out that there were other people that were interested in Title IX, and there were professors that could kind of help me really unpack that. Now, my experience embodies both educational and professional experience, and I'm going to kind of interweave some of those experiences with you guys as I talk about my path to transitioning from being a student athlete in the field and really diving deep into graduate studies. I found this quote, and it really speaks to where I was during that transition. The best way to predict the future is to create it. At that time, I didn't know the way to Grambling from Mississippi Valley State. I didn't know anything outside of a couple former people who were on the golf team before I got to Valley had went, but nobody really explained to me what graduate school was. I just jumped in because I didn't know what else to do. And my coach said, do this. But I also had this burning question: why are women so undervalued in sports? I realized that when I was in different championships and going to different tournaments and traveling, that there would be so many people out watching the men play. But when it came time for the women to be up to first tee and the tee off, it was only us. Nobody really cared about what we were doing. Even furthermore, nobody even really knew there was a women's golf team. And when I got to Grambling, it was pretty much the same thing. But I also realized they didn't really care about women's basketball. Nobody would come to the women's basketball games, but the room would be packed for men's basketball games. And I just wanted to know why. And so in that transition, the one thing that I would share for you guys that are in that space where you want to transition from being a college athlete into whatever's next. The first thing I would say is define what that is for you. Define what next is, but also establish relationships with those who can help you achieve those goals. Realize nothing's for free. And so research ways that you can be an asset for those that can help you achieve those goals. Just because an opportunity is not published doesn't mean it's not for you. I opened the doors to myself for Grambling. At that time that I actually applied, they weren't accepting students. And so I negotiated all summer on why they should accept me into the program and why I as a student athlete being so lost, it was more their jobs to open the door and to kind of help me. And I was able to advocate to get that door open and even get a graduate assistantship. That wasn't there. That was something that they didn't do. That was something that I basically developed them and said, hey, you guys do this. Also, don't worry about the next 5 years. Really strategize and focus on the here and now. My graduate degrees in sports can pretty much be summed up by these two quotes. So in my uncertainty, I went to graduate school and there it all happened. That definitely explains that transition of where I was at Grambling State. But also, if opportunity doesn't knock, build the door. And at that time, when I first reached out to Grambling, I got about 4 no's before I got my yes. And I was just persistent. I went down there, I volunteered, I helped the department. If a professor needed help with something, I was there. And I didn't even live in Grambling. And it was a 4 or 5 hour trip back and forth from Itta, Mississippi to Grambling. But I found my way to do it because I wanted to go to that school and I wanted to get that degree under those professors. It wasn't easy because I also knew going to Grambling, I was bringing some Title IX questions to me. At this time, I'm volunteering as much as I can. Anytime somebody has something that's available or I hear something through a mentor, through somebody that's in my network, I'm out there and I'm in it and volunteering and getting experience. But the more experience I get, the more Title IX questions are basically just falling on me. And so at this time, when I'm in my master's degree, some of the questions that were really impacting me was, what rules have been put in place that are currently being used that marginalize women in sport? But also, why are there so few head female coaches in women's sports? I had a chance at Grambling State University to work under Dr. Darlene Kluka, who at that time had her hands in the Olympic sports on the volleyball side. So it was just a phenomenal amount of knowledge that she was giving us constantly. And she was the first professor that brought to my eyes that there were more men head coaches in women's sports versus females. And I just couldn't sit with it. I didn't understand it. What impact has the NC2A Emerging Sports Program had on increasing opportunities for women of color? Again, at Grambling State, we had professors from all over come and talk to us, former Olympians. And one of the things that I kept hearing about was this emerging sports program and how it was built to basically increase opportunities for women in sport. But I was also hearing from women of color that it was basically depleting opportunities and impacting their opportunities. And I really wanted to really explore why. And so for those students who are in that space, who are thinking about graduate degree, a couple suggestions that I have for you is to explore why you want that degree. For me, it was really to unpack these Title IX questions. When I went to Grambling, it was really to explore. At that time, I didn't really know what I wanted to be in sport management and didn't really understand what sport management was. And so I kind of figured that out through the degree. Research if those positions in the field have the same have the same similar educational path that you have. And so once I got to Grambling, I was diehard on creating a career to be an athletic director. And so I dived deep into understanding what degrees they had. And at that time, I saw there was a trend where a lot of ADs were starting to get a doctorate degree. And that basically led me to get my doctorate degree. Most importantly, forecast if your financial commitment to a graduate degree and if that position are linked, meaning if that decision that you made to get your graduate degree will basically be something that you love financially later on, or is it something that's going to become a burden? There was just about a couple months ago, a great dialogue on Twitter where a couple of colleagues of mine started this dialogue on if you had to do it all over again financially only through a financial lens, would you get your PhD? And overwhelmingly, PhD said no. So it was a great dialogue. And I know a lot of people are still deep into that conversation, but I think it's important to really unpack that for yourselves before you dive in. Realize a graduate degree in sports doesn't open the door to your dream job in sports. It provides a path. Right now, we're just in a space where people in professional sports see sport management degree as an advantage. When I was in your place as a student, that wasn't an advantage. When I started out with the United States Golf Association years ago as an intern, out of about 50 interns, I was the only one, no, it was like 3 of us that had a sport management degree. Everybody else was business. We had a couple of liberal arts. We had a lot of psychology, oddly enough, but there wasn't anybody in sport management. And at that time, USGA didn't see that as a benefit. And so sometimes you have to balance that education with that professional side, that volunteering experience. And sometimes you have to have even more experience. Making it in professional and college sports. There's a balance in my CV between being with a D1 athletic program and being in golf. I loved my time in golf, but I knew golf had a shelf life. The next couple things that I say from you guys, I probably will get a couple faces. I'll probably get a couple grunts like, oh my God, I can't believe you left that. Yes, I had the ability to walk on any golf course. Yes, I got free golf clubs almost once a year. Yes, I got a chance to work with the senior PGA, which to this day was probably the best experience of my life. Yes, I got beautiful packages from Mercedes-Benz and other sponsors of golf tournaments, but I didn't have a car. I didn't have a house. I didn't have any life outside of the golf. for about 4 years. That's very difficult. And then I was sleeping out of a suitcase because you never know who's going to need you at what tournament. It was a great experience, but I knew it had a shelf life. I knew I wanted to do more, and that really pushed me to taking a break and going and actually thinking about that whole idea of when I was at Grambling and I wanted to be an athletic administrator, and hey, let's actually think about getting a PhD. I morphed into college athletics again with questions sitting in that position as a senior academic advisor / compliance advisor at University of New Mexico. It was there and through my experience in golf. Being out at tournaments, I was wondering, where are the Black females in LPGA? There were hardly no Black females. And then more importantly, where are the women leaders in golf? Every time I would go to a tournament and I would be at a meeting, I would probably be one or two women that were in the room. It was very eye-opening. When I got into college sports, it was more, is Title IX an effective tool for balancing equity in college sports? I would hear stories of people that in sport management who were against football. And their whole idea was, let's get rid of football. If we get rid of football, we could balance college sports. But I never really saw that as the way to do it. And so I brought with me these questions. For those who are thinking about a professional or a college career in sports, I would definitely suggest mentorship. With each one of my positions, they've either been guided through mentorship or I've had a mentor really help me through the application process. Networking with peers is crucial. I can't tell you how many times after I've gotten a job, I've heard from colleagues like, yeah, we called so-and-so and they happen to be with me at Grambling, or they were volunteering with me to kind of get a feel of who you were before we interviewed you. And it's this whole blind recommendation process where you never know if the student sitting next to you in class is going to be the one to give you a recommendation. Forging a positive relationship with professors. The reason why I got the senior academic position in athletics at University of New Mexico is because of a professor. A professor had actually been talking to one of my peers, and my peers was hiring for the position. I didn't know him because I wasn't in any of his classes yet, but she knew him, and because we had a good working relationship, I helped her with some research. She knew what I wanted to do. She was able to basically link me up with that position, and I got it basically off of her relationship with him. And she basically said, you know, she would be awesome for the position. Attending academic sports conferences and professional sports careers. At the beginning of my career, I was diehard AFERT. Not really as active now in AFERT. I'm more NAS, NASM, sport law, recreation. But any of those organizations are going to give you a footing into having an opportunity to network with other people outside of that circle that you're used to. And so you want to get with other people outside of your university to see what they're doing, to make sure that you're able to access all of the opportunities in sport. Typically, opportunities in sport force you to see yourself as a unique commodity. What that means is going back to your sport marketing class and seeing you as the product. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? And what are your threats? And once you build yourself, brand yourself as that product, it typically looks like this. And so you become the product versus the customer who is your potential employer. And so you set it up with benefits versus wants, your benefits versus the wants of your employer. Your experiences balance with their fears, your features as the product versus their needs. And once you outline all of this, this really helps you to structure not only your interview, but it kind of speaks to why you would be an asset to that organization. And so what I'm doing here is showing you that the things that your teachers and your professors are showing you in class actually can be used. We're not just saying these things, you can actually apply them, especially in sports. It's a value in really showing that how you're going to be different, because for our field, especially going into professional sports, you have to think there are so many people applying for that one job. And so what makes you stand out? What makes you seem like that unique person that's going to be an asset to the organization? If you can key in on that, potentially you could get the job. Once you've done all of that, you definitely want to build a go-to-market plan for yourself as the product. You have to have some idea of salary negotiations, because in sports, again, we're going to ask you, well, what do you feel like you should be paid? And you have to be able to speak to that. You need to go and you need to network with your peers. You need to network with colleagues that have the position, get an idea of what the salary is, and also bonuses as well. Your marketing plan is going to include, yes, your resume, your cover letter, but or your CV, but also evidence of quality work. And this is evidence beyond a reference letter. Anybody can write a reference letter. But if you're visually showing on social media what you're doing, that's going to be key. And so say, for instance, you want to be a head coach for volleyball. And right now on your LinkedIn page, on your Twitter page, on your Instagram page, you have nothing about volleyball. When they go, that potential employer goes to those sites and they look at you, they're like, I don't understand. This person has nothing about volleyball, but yet and still their resume is saying this is their dream job. It makes no sense. Also, you have to be aware that right now, people aren't being as, we'll say, factual with a lot of things on their resume. Social media is another visual way to show that you did it. So if you worked Super Bowl when it was here in Houston, why are there not pictures up on your Twitter to prove that? If you want to work with the Houston Astros, why haven't you volunteered with them and then have pictures to prove that you were volunteering with them? Sometimes those visuals go a long way. Also, having people on LinkedIn give you promotions, write recommendations are actual keys too. People that maybe your employer look up to. So maybe if you're working for a small high school and it's a baseball team and that baseball coach is a huge Astros fan, maybe you're showing where you've done some work with the people in marketing for the Astros. You want to show a link to help build your brand visually and written. And so in LinkedIn, again, there are places where you can upload your resume. There are places that you can actually post podcast-like, detailed, contextual-like stuff, but you have to be careful of that. I could go in more details if you want me to. But you want to actually write what you're doing, and you want to actually do some linking and some retweeting too, but be careful of that. We can go into it later. More importantly, when you launch your brand, it should define what is your brand in sports. Once you do that, build a roadmap. This is my roadmap. So in 2000, I was with the United States Golf Association. Then I floated over to the First Tee for a couple years, went to the YMCA, which I'll talk about in a couple seconds, volunteered in sports while I was working on my doctorate degree because I knew that education wasn't enough. And also working in athletics and working for the First Tee was not enough. I dived deep into UNM athletics, even though I started with UNM athletics in 2003. I was volunteering, so they knew who I was before they hired me. I started my first assistant professor position at University of West Georgia, which is again a position that I built. They were not hiring at that time. I was in the area. I wanted to move to Atlanta, and I sold myself and explained to them why they needed me. And I could go into more details with that. One of the creativities of being in sport is understanding that you have to be a unique commodity. Every now and then, even still now, I'll go and I'll interview for positions that I know maybe I don't want, but I need that skill. And it kind of keeps me really up to date. I started that when I was working on my doctoral work, and the first position was the YMCA. I didn't have a lot of customer service experience, and so I knew I could get it, customer service and fundraising with the YMCA. And boy, did they put me through the ringer. It was a great experience and definitely helped to build my career. Life as a college athletic administrator. These quotes explained exactly why I went in and why I left. I went in trying to change the world. I saw these student athletes after leaving Grambling as voiceless and powerless, and oh, the poor NC2A is taking advantage of them. They can't get paid. I must go in and change the world. But I also realized very quick, I couldn't change the world. I couldn't change college athletics, being in college athletics. I had to step out. But that was very difficult for me because I thought I wanted to be an athletic director. And in compliance, to me, I saw a lot of athletic directors that had sat in that compliance position or had done something in athletic advisement. So it was really difficult for me to leave, but I was miserable because I couldn't change. I couldn't effectively change anything. And so I knew it was time to leave, and it was very difficult. But again, the passion was gone. I transitioned during this time of realizing my passion was gone to research. I realized very quickly that I couldn't fix it inside the system, but I could fix it pen to paper. I was curious through all these Title IX questions, which having all these different positions, I was able to answer. And I had professors that were telling me research, and I was saying, no, oh gosh, no, I'm a horrible researcher. I don't want to do that. But realized very quickly that I had to. And I learned that through reading books, oddly enough. It was books that really helped me to understand that's where I'm going to find my Title IX questions. And how I did it was I picked a sport academic journal to read. And I was reading journals just to understand how people wrote. How do you write research? You can't understand how to write research unless you read research. But I stepped outside of sports journals. I dived deep into the business journals, the people who weren't talking about sports, but pretty much had that same language. And it really helped me to see sports from the outside in, which is the way we talk about sports. Sports is basically navigated from the outside in. Sometimes they're former athletes, sometimes they're not. I also had to learn very quickly that I had to give my brain a break. You got to step away from work sometimes. You get bummed down and it becomes too much. And so as crazy as this sounds, while I was completing my doctorate degree at the University of New Mexico, I took counseling classes on the side to give my brain a break. The cool thing about counseling is if you do any graduate work in counseling, you realize that you're actually going through counseling while you're getting your degree, which anybody who's gotten their doctorate degree was like, yay, that's the win, free counseling. But it really was beneficial because I was forced to be around people who are touchy-feely, which we are not touchy-feely in sports, and people who really wanted to get down to the essence of mental health, which I didn't realize was going to be such a trending topic, especially with us now in sports and COVID. Building relationships with people outside of your sports network and your comfort circle was also key. I had a strong sports network, but outside of sports, I didn't really have a lot of friends. And so I forced myself out of my sports box to learn how to speak again without sports. It's very weird once you step out of your circle and you realize the only thing I have to talk about and debate about is sports. If you ask me something outside of college athletics, I'm lost. And so I really, at the University of New Mexico, was forced into sports because I'm working for the First Tee, I'm working for UNM Athletics, and I'm getting my doctorate degree. And so sports is my world. But being in counseling forced me to talk about other things and to really see sports from a different aspect. And so it was at that point that I started thinking about meditation. I started thinking about sports psychology. I started thinking about the mental aspect of sports, but I definitely have to nod to my counseling background for that. I also suggest becoming a toddler and asking those infinite why questions. And so, when have your little sister or your brother or your daughter, your son, and everything you say has a why question. You say, I need you to eat your sandwich. Why? I need you to go outside and play. Why? And you're like, stop asking why. You have to go back to asking those infinite why questions. Why is this happening? Why is this going the way it is? Why did this person choose to do this? Why are we doing that? And it's through those why questions that you'll find your passion. If I had it to do all over again, just like Yogi Berra said, I would do it all over again. My path basically made me who I am. And it was through my path, through those challenges, that I really understood and gained my passion. When I was finishing up doing my comps, my professors actually stopped me and they were like, I know you want to be an athletic director. We've heard it from you for the last couple of years. That's all you talked about. All your assignments were around being this athletic director and how you're going to change the world as this woman because nobody wants a woman to be an athletic director. Okay, we heard it. you're not an athletic director, you're a professor. I wanted to cry. I was like, oh my God, you guys think I'm horrible. You just said I was horrible. You just said I can't make it professionally because you gave me the worst career ever. And at that time, I didn't respect what it took to be a sport management professor. I saw them as, because that's the way they were depicted to me, as people who had never been in a field, people who didn't have experiences in practical sport. And so for them to tell me that at my comps was a dagger. It hit hard, and I fought it. And they unpacked it, and they were like, you don't understand, Courtney. Your mind thinks like a professor. You break things down very basically for people to understand. And I'm screaming at them, no, I'm in compliance. I can do this. I'm harsh. I'm rigid. I'm rules. I'm black and white. I know that handbook, that D1 handbook, back and forth. And they're like, yeah, you're going to be great teaching it. It was hard, but it was a path for me to understand. And it wasn't until, I'll be honest, my first teaching assistantship at Grambling State that I could kind of understand it. And so when they said it to me when I was in my doctoral program, it wasn't far-fetched. It was a dagger, but it wasn't far-fetched because I had to think back like, yeah, I did kind of enjoy the teaching assistantship. You guys aren't far off, but it was still a struggle for me. I think right now where we sit and as our future administrators sit, there are a couple things that you can use into building your pathways, because all too often we have career fairs like this and you guys are introduced to different people like myself who come in and say, you can do it. But I think it all comes down to understanding what the field is. The field is drastically different than when I got my doctoral degree in 2009. It's morphed into a whole other entity. We don't even know what the NC2A is going to look like. I mean, right now, amateur sports is on the table. We have legislation in Florida that is directly attacking amateur sports. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you know I'm for this. Die hard, name, image, likeness, pay college athletes now. But this July, we have Florida State, University of Florida, Florida A&M are going to be impacted by this legislation in July. This is crazy. Now, we do know the NC2A has tabled everything with name, image, likeness due to COVID, but this legislation is coming. And so pay to play is going to be huge. Esports is crazy right now. I could have never imagined, even in my doctoral work, that esports was going to take off the way it has. It's totally bypassed professional sports in regards to revenue. And unlike all other sports that died during COVID or was tabled, esports kept going and they kept building and opportunities were still there. And now even we're seeing sport management programs morph esports curriculum into their degrees. We're seeing scholarships being given, especially with California leading the way in esports as well. COVID directly impacted sports. Unfortunately, I see a lot of programs being eliminated. And as a Title IX researcher, there's a gut feeling that it's going to be women's sports on the chopping block. For many years, a lot of ADs have used Title IX as the way to eliminate women's sports. And I see COVID becoming that new Title IX in that vein. It's a very scary space, especially for HBCUs like Texas Southern University and a couple others that are already have limited resources. And so we'll unfortunately have to wait and see, but the fabric, the environment of sports will definitely be changed. I also see diversity, equity, and inclusion popping up. A trendy new title in college athletics is the Associate Athletic Director for DEI. And so we're seeing college athletics understanding that there has to be more of an emphasis on this just because of so much that's happened and changed the landscape of what we even know America to be. And so I do see that position coming available a little bit more. Key takeaways from today. Passion and motivation can be fueled in many different ways. Somebody's path may not be your path. Networking is key to your success in sports. You may have to develop your own job, so be ready. Start now. Use those assignments in your class to do it. anything can be done in sports. Do not limit your creativity. I mean, you guys, right now, just use esports. If esports can make it, you can do it. Stay true to yourself. It's okay to leave if the passion is gone. And last but not least, never give up. It's important to learn from your fails.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I want to open the floor to questions to see if anybody has any questions.
I have one question actually. Oh,
go ahead, Annie.
Okay, I have a question. It's kind of related to Title IX. How, like, what are your thoughts on the progression and the kind of, not so much acceptance, but kind of the information about Title IX and how we've kind of, I guess I feel like I've known more about Title IX the past couple of years I've been in college, more so than it used to be. How do you think that we're progressing with that in terms of knowledge and information given to athletes and coaches?
Yeah, we have a long ways to go. There's been plenty of reports out, and I mean, every time we hit a year or 10 years, there's another report that's placed out that basically says Title IX, we did a lot of great things, but we still have a long ways to go. I think we have to really understand that we have to start valuing gender equity, and we have to stop looking at it as a compliance checkpoint. And until sports realizes that there's value in equity, there's value in diversity, there's value in having women as leaders, having women play sports, we're just going to be a long ways away. I think there's a need for us to restructure it. And that's what a lot of my research now has been focused on. Yes, we still need Title IX. Don't get me wrong there, but we do need some more avenues to make sure that the mandate is actually being approached correctly. Great question.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Flowers. I'm Kristen McAlexander, Department Chair of Exercise Science and Sport Management.
Thanks so much. Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. I truly appreciate you.
Well, it was all Annie, and I'm so glad that she reached out.
Oh, she's phenomenal.
Yes, we all know. Thank you so much for your presentation. I was hoping to learn more about your specific research findings. Could you expand on some of the points that you just made in response to Annie's question? So structurally, or even, just in terms of administration for various colleges or even the NCAA, what can we do to promote more diversity and the equity that we are so desperately still seeking?
Yeah, great question. And I'll be honest, most of my research has not been able to unfortunately answer that question. It's basically been the nuts and the bolts of, I hate to even use the word attacking, but in a way it has been the emerging sports program. And in that, looking at some of the programs that are being rolled out and what the numbers will do. We have sports like lacrosse, we have rowing, we have equestrian, volleyball made it years ago. It's something else, beach volleyball, and it's two more that escape my mind right now. They only, unfortunately, few opportunities for Caucasian women, but the numbers are drastically down for women of color, unfortunately. And so in that vein, we have to do something else. But there's also roster management that I talk about. And so we're using our numbers in track and field. We're using our numbers in women's basketball to basically say that there's some equity there. But as we all know, especially with track and field and cross country, those numbers could be the same. Those rosters could be the same. So if you're on cross country, you could be on a track and field team. But unfortunately, in Title IX, we're counting them twice. So we're counting a single person twice. Here's the roster management. I'll be honest, I am very leery with saying do away with Title IX, which some of my colleagues have said. We need to totally get away with it. I don't think that is true in college athletics. I think that if we do away with Title IX, we will be in a disastrous place, not only for participation levels for women, but also for leadership as well, which we're extremely struggling with. But we do have a long ways to go, but unfortunately, I just don't have the answers. Hopefully research will show it. But right now, I just don't have the answers of how to fix the system.
No, that's a good and honest answer. Do you think, as a follow-up, do you think if we had more women of color, and other underrepresented groups in leadership, as many do say we should, this would help with some of these equity and diversity issues? So, start from the top and work down.
I think the visualization of it will help. The visualization meaning that if you have a head coach that is a woman of color, that will open the door for more young girls to say that I could do it. Tiger Woods is a great example of that. He opened the door, and him visually said to many people of color, many cultures, hey, I can do it. That's a place that I will be welcome. And so there is that space. However, as a researcher, I just don't know. What may work for one demographic may not work for another demographic. However, I am a huge proponent of name, image, likeness legislation in all the state legislations that are coming about. And I see it as an equalizer for women's sports. And that's one of the things that my research and speaking engagements have been really harping on. Women's sports has been devalued by the NC2A, and all of these state legislatures are basically saying third parties can now pay these college athletes. And they're not saying third parties can pay football players in Power 5, men's basketball players in Power 5. They're saying they could pay anybody. So that means that kid that's sitting on the golf team at an HBCU has just as much opportunity to get the sponsorship with a little bit more hustle, but just as much opportunity to get the sponsorship as that kid that's at Florida State that's the quarterback on the football team. It's going to be an equal medium. I think taking that out the NC2A is going to be key in making sure that that's happening. And I see that representation coming through with those state legislatures. I unfortunately am not so much, I can't say that I see the NC2A being fair in whatever they're deciding to do in regards to name, image, likeness. Right now, they've tabled it. We've had every conference, every student athlete, the student athlete advisory committees, everybody have said they're upset that the NC2A has tabled it, but it's a scary landscape right now. It's kind of scary for what they're going to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question.
I have another question. Oh, never mind. Go ahead, Dylan.
Is that okay, Andy, if I ask my question?
Yeah. No, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
You did mention earlier about how your professors kind of said, hey, we don't think you should be an AD, you should be professor. And obviously that's a very big, change from kind of like your viewpoint and what you wanted to do. Can you maybe talk about a little like how you were able to transition and kind of change your like aspect and dynamics of, hey, I want to make a change here, but let me see how I can make that change in this route rather than being the AD that I wanted to do in the first place?
Yeah, I'll be honest. We will shake hands and congratulate Todd Seidler for that. He was my dissertation chair at the University of Mexico, my mentor, my guide, my everything while I was there. I basically would even go as far as to say the reason why I went to the University of Mexico was to work under him. He was the guru of sport law and facilities at that time in athletics. And so I really stuck under him, and he gave me the opportunity to come in and teach some of his classes. That helped. But more importantly, he knew me. He knew my character. He knew me outside of sports. And so he was able to really guide me. He was the one who said, hey, I noticed you don't have a presentation in CERLA. I need you to put a presentation in. And so he kind of forced my hand, if you will, in showing me that that was more the environment for it. He was also my sounding ground. Being in college athletics at that time in my position was very difficult. College athletics is a rough space because there's always a fire. And so he would use those challenges and show me how it was more beneficial in sports. He would say things like, yeah, how was your summer? You got anything planned for summer vacation? I'm like, well, no, we got to get ready for eligibility. He was like, well, I'm going to Canada for a month and I'm taking off because I'm a sport management professor. And I'm like, okay, really? You have to have have somebody that knows you and knows what's important to you. And he knew that, him and his wife, I had an awesome relationship with him and his wife. And even she would be like, yeah, Courtney, what did you do this weekend? I'm like, well, worked on eligibility. I got 2 new kids coming in. She was like, well, me and Todd spent the time in Michigan. Yeah, you're home. When was the last time you went home? So things like that. You have to have people in your corner that know you, and also sharing the language. He helped me transition my resume to a CV, which when he first brought up a curriculum vitae, I was like, what's that? Can I submit my resume? He's like, nope, no more resume for you is curriculum vitae. And I need you to meet this person. I need you to work with that person. So he was instrumental in helping me to make that change.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great question.
Hi, Courtney. My name's Barry Shaw. I'm the professor of exercise science, sport management, and the chairman of the Division of Human Performance and Human Behavior, or director, sorry.
Nice to meet you, and I see you're on campus.
You bet. You bet. I live here pretty much.
I understand.
I do have a question that is more geared for the students. We have, as an institution, have made a very strong commitment to the development of experiential learning, experiential learning opportunities for the students as they go through. We've created job opportunities for them, like Annie and Dylan and Sierra, who's on this call, serve as operations personnel for our department. Anyway, could you speak to them about the value of experiential learning opportunities and the importance for prospective development professionally and the way that they can use that in their career?
Oh, yes. I'm going to be very candid in this. I have a great working relationship with a lot of the professional teams here in Houston. And the one thing that I can tell you is they don't care about your degree. They want that experience. And I can't, the degree is just a check mark on the job application, but they want kids who understand what it takes to be in sports. They want you to be able to come in and them not to spell out to you what that customer interface looks like, but they're expecting you just to do the job off of knowing their language. To kind of speak to it a little bit more, a couple of years ago, I had a meeting with the Houston Astros, and they were very candid with me. They were like, okay, your intern suck. I was like, oh boy, here we go. Why did my intern suck? What did I do wrong? And they said they don't understand data analytics. And I said, I'm not teaching data analytics. Do I need to teach data analytics? And they were like, you're sport management. Why are you not teaching data analytics? And as they're yelling at me, I'm typing to my department chair and I'm like, we got to build a data analytics course. And she's like, when? I'm like, yesterday. And so to that point, you have to stay true and you have to stay fluent with what's going on. Unfortunately, the programs won't always be able to pivot as quickly as the trends are needed in the field. But being around them and being socialized with them, sometimes you students will know because of your relationships with people in the field what we need to change in sport management. And so with that being said, it's a twofold relationship. We need you guys to be in the field to tell us what we need to do better, but you guys have to be in the field to get that experience because you need so much more beyond what we can give you in the classroom. One of the things I always tell my students is by the time we get done with this textbook, it's going to be outdated. And so when you leave this classroom, everything I just taught you is going to be outdated. Hold on to the theories, hold on to some of the context, hold on to the current events, but the rest of the stuff, recycle and enhance. The way you enhance it is through that practical knowledge. Whoever has an opportunity in sport, take advantage of it. That also includes your professors. I tell students all the time, professors have to do research. You can volunteer with your professors on a research project and gain valuable experience. Go to your athletic departments, go to the marketing people, go to HR, go to ticket ops and say, how can I help? Building that experience at home. If you guys don't have athletic experience from almost everybody that's on your athletic team, that's devaluing your experience already, because that's the first thing somebody's going to say is, why are you applying to the University of Houston and you've done nothing practical at home in regards to athletics? And so that practical experience, I would argue, is sometimes even more important than that education. It's just going to push you so much further, especially provide the uniqueness in your application.
Well, thank you for that. Does anybody else have any other questions? I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, I do want to leave you guys with a couple people that are currently looking. So take out your papers and here we go. The Houston Dynamo are currently building an internship program and they're revamping their whole system. And so what that means is they were directly impacted by COVID. And so they're going to have a lot of full-time positions available very soon and part-time. So pay attention to their website and realize that you can get Houston Dash opportunities through the Dynamo as well. The Houston Astros will also be publishing very soon all of their summer internships. And so go to their website and also realize that they have a couple full-time positions already available, several of them on Teamwork Online. You guys have to have an account through Teamwork Online. The International Olympic Committee and the United States Olympic Committee have built mentorship programs because of COVID. What that means is those mentorship programs have provided them an opportunity to kind of give back, where you get to kind of shadow. Right now it's USA weightlifting and I believe USA equestrian. And I'll send Annie the link to those so you guys can look for those opportunities as well. Houston Sports Alliance always needs help throughout the summer. So go on their website. They just had their sports awards event this week. And so they'll probably be posting some opportunities too, because the Junior Olympics is coming to Houston this summer, I believe in July. So there'll be a lot of opportunities available if you guys can get down to Houston for that. Let me think, who else am I missing? I haven't heard anything from the Rockets yet, but the Rockets internships are usually in the fall. And the Texans have a lot of full-time positions available as well. But if you don't have an account on Teamwork Online, which is basically where you're going to apply for all of these positions outside of the United States Olympic positions, definitely get on Teamwork Online. And you can set your account up where you get hits through your email weekly, monthly about openings in positions. But always remember, if it's not posted, make it yourself. Reach out to those people and tell them how awesome you are and how much you can help their organization if they hire you.
Yes, ma'am. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to just share with us your experiences and kind of give us some insight into our industry.
No problem. And I'll definitely follow up with the emails, just sharing all of those opportunities just in case any students are looking. But you guys feel free to reach out to me. I am on Twitter and Instagram, or you can send me an email and I would love to discuss anything further if you like.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Flowers.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr.
Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye.